Hey guys, what is up? It's me, Rishabh. I haven't made a video in a long time, but I am really looking forward to talk about this. It's something that I've thought about for a long while. So I'm a big fan of The Amazing Race. I think it's a great show. It's basically a show where 11 to 12 teams travel around the world and they have to complete different challenges to not come last. And it's basically a really cool and fun show to really watch. But The Amazing Race usually is considered to be different from Survivor because it doesn't really have a winner's edit, is what is considered mostly by most of the fan base. And while I'm not really here to talk about the winner's edit today, I am here to talk about a different kind of edit, which is the Alpha Boy edit. Okay, so I want to be clear. What do I mean by the Alpha Boy edit? Well, if you know me, you know I'm a relatively detailed and analytical person, and I started noticing a trend in The Amazing Race. In The Amazing Race, there would always be, or in the seasons I've watched till now, there would always be this guy to guy team, and they'd be really strong. They'd be really strong pretty much up to the first half of the race, where they'd pretty much be the team to beat. They'll be the team that everyone's gunning and rooting for. And they'd really be the team that would seem to be the stiffest competition. But then I started to notice one thing, that this team would always go out near the end. The lowest that one of these teams have ever gone is leg 9. This team has never been eliminated before leg 9. So they'd almost be sort of like the final obstacle for the winner. But the thing is, this happens every season. So every season, there's this boy to boy team. And as I was watching season 34, I was really wondering if this was really the big test to me as to whether this theory holds up with Marcus and Michael. Marcus and Michael were two military brothers. They don't get to spend a lot of time with one another, and they were on the recent season of the show. And immediately they showed all the signs that I was looking for when I was binge watching or when I was watching back some of the Amazing Race seasons. They had the same attitude of we need to be first every single leg, and in the process of that would actually end up making more mistakes than if they would have taken a calmer approach, and also made it relatively deep into the game, and also made it to the point where typically this team goes out, where they ended up going out at leg 10. So I really felt like this season, which I watched live, really did make me think that this theory does hold up, that there's always this guy to guy team that is relatively physical. So this has to be a relatively physical guy to guy team on The Amazing Race that ends up really making it far. Sometimes they even make it to the final leg, but they don't win. And that's really the biggest factor, is that they don't win the game. They're like kind of the final obstacle in most cases that the eventual winner has to overcome, but they don't win. And they're always the biggest threat left on the board up until they go out. And we often also see these teams end up making mistakes. Because they always try so hard to be number one, they also end up making a lot of mistakes on the way. And that is also another aspect that we see with the Alpha Boy edit. Now, some of the other seasons I watched, I want to talk about those people as well and tell you why I feel like this theory really is holding up. In season 32, we had Riley and Madison, who were definitely the Alpha Boy team this season. Though I would say that there's also an argument for Gary and D'Angelo. I think there's an argument for them as well. Both of these teams had relatively similar content of wanting to be on the top, being alpha guys, never giving up, always sort of having this mentality where they need to perform the best. And ultimately, both of them ended up losing, with Gary and D'Angelo going out in the penultimate leg of the race, finishing 4th place, and with Riley and Madison making it to the final leg, being the ones to beat, but ultimately going out at third place. Now, usually you don't have two Alpha Boy teams. This is really the first season where I definitely feel like both these teams qualified, though I'd lean towards Riley and Madison. Again, they usually will get a lot of content about how they need to be first, how they win all the time in life, how they're very competitive. And also, they'd end up doing really, really well for a lot of the show, pretty much maybe even up to the leg that they don't end up winning or they end up leaving. I think Riley and Madison fits that bill more because Gary and D'Angelo as a team were more inconsistent, but could go either way here. I think Leo and Jamal fit that bill perfectly in The Amazing Race 31, as I definitely felt like they really were the team to beat there, and it definitely felt like they were the team to look out for, and again had a very similar run going out at third place in the final leg, again talking about how they need to win this time and how they need to try to give more than their 100% every leg. So definitely feel like that is an aspect here, and definitely feel like they were the Alpha Boy team for The Amazing Race 31. Now, out of all the seasons I've watched, I've got to say The Amazing Race 30 was the most wonkiest, as Alex and Connor don't really talk that much about being first, but it's pretty clear still that they're meant to be the Alpha Boy team of the season. Again, they dominate a lot of the season, even though they're not as dominant as these teams typically are. They definitely are usually on the top half of the pack. And they go out at fourth place again in the penultimate leg of the race. So, which is a very typical place for these kind of teams to sort of go out. So I think that Alex and Connor are the Alpha Boy team from The Amazing Race 30. I think 29 was pretty blatant that Matt and Redmond were easily the Alpha Boy team. Again, they were really, really, really motivated and dedicated. Of course, Redmond having a prosthetic leg, they were definitely the bro kind of team. That was their sort of dynamic. They made it really far. They were always a dominant team, a team to beat. And honestly, I think if they made it to the final leg, they would have 100% won, because they were better than the winners. Even I think they were better than Tara and Joey. They again got a lot of content on how they needed to be first, were targeted by Ashley and what was his name again? I keep forgetting his name, but I think it was Brankton and Ashley, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, they were targeted by them. Again, this is a pretty blatant one, and I think this was really where I was starting to pick up on the Alpha Boy strategy or the Alpha Boy team edit. So yeah, this was definitely a very blatant one to me as well. From The Amazing Race 27, I definitely have to consider Josh and Tanner to be the Alpha Boy team. Again, really following the same beats, only they make it a little less further, going out at the ninth leg. They were immediate targets. They were literally first, second, were completely competing with Justin and Diana, and were really the team to beat until they completely drop the ball, get saved by a non-elimination leg, and then end up going out the next leg, so because of a U-turn. So really, they were easily the team to beat. I mean, they got double U-turned, and that was the only reason they went out, despite having to do a speed bump, and really were a strong team that lost focus somewhere down the line. So I think they're a pretty easy pick here, and I think this was another season where really the Alpha Boy team strategy was really starting to come to me. Jet and Cord were, I think, the Alpha Boy team definitely on season 24, All-Stars. Again, being this massive team, here to win. They're here for the third time. They've got to win this. Really make it really far again. Win quite a few legs, ultimately end up going out at fifth place at leg 10. Again, this was another, I think season 24 was one of the most recent ones that I watched, so definitely this was when this idea really started to come to me. But now I feel like we have the two teams that I really want to talk about, that I feel like exemplify this edit strategy. The first being Brody and Kurt from The Amazing Race 28. Now, Brody and Kurt are a really interesting duo here, where they were guns blazing Alpha Boys. Like, they were the definition of what you call Alpha Boys, because really, I mean, they never dropped the ball. Like, they literally never dropped the ball until in leg 9, when they just fall behind because Brody isn't able to do the roadblock as well. And so they just fall to fifth out of the 6 teams remaining, and they immediately catch up. But then there was a U-turn, and they get double U-turn with no one else getting U-turn, and then the roadblock was pretty dumb there, so they easily go out there. But to me, Brody and Kurt were easily the epitome of an Alpha Boy team. We get literally anything that comes out of their mouth is how competitive they are, is how they've won stuff, is how they never give up, is their competitive drive, is that they really always give their 100 million% in everything. Like, all we hear from these guys is that over and over and over again, and I loved watching them. But this is where it started to wane on me, that again, despite being so strong as players, they weren't able to win. And that's really the trend with these Alpha Boys, is again, they went out at 5th place in leg 10. They go out in this sort of 3rd to 5th place position. They always make it far, but they never win the game. And I feel like that is a very important point about them as players. So for me, that Brody and Kurt was really the first time that I think this idea came to my mind. So I really had to talk about them separately, because to me they were a really, really important team in terms of this kind of strategy being used for them. So yeah. And the final one is Ryan and Dusty, who were really, really Alpha Boy. Like, I mean, the last 2 seasons have really gone hard on this edit. Even Marcus and Michael, I felt like, were really hard Alpha Boy. Where I think this could also be an archetypal thing, which leads to this kind of edit. Because like Ryan and Dusty, again, there's this great story where Ryan, an innocent man, went to jail, and Dusty sort of bailed him out, took him out. They're now racing together. And they were so dominant. I don't think any singular team ever dominated that hard for the first half. Where I don't exactly remember their placements, but I don't think they ever came below 2nd place in the first few legs. And then they just fall behind randomly out of the blue in one of the legs, and just literally never recover. Where from that point on, they are really always just struggling to make it through. But the problem is that they can easily recover if they calm down, which they never do. And so they always just keep fretting, and they always, especially Dusty, they always keep panicking and worrying and stressing, which is, to be fair, probably what I would have done, but whatever. And so through that, they keep losing more and more time. But then because they are just inherently so good and so competitive, they always make it through. Ultimately, Ryan and Dusty, probably due to the COVID thing and due to the lack of competition, were really able to make it to the final leg of the race. They weren't able to win. Again, they came at 3rd place. They were way far behind the other 2 teams, where Raquel and Kayla and Kim and Ben. So that is, to me, this is the best example that I could have taken. I think they are the most Alpha Boy team we have, at least from the seasons that I've watched so far. So yeah, I don't know how many of you watched The Amazing Race, but it's a really cool show, and I really wanted to do this video. So I don't know, I kind of wanted to throw this out there because I see a lot of videos on Survivor edits. I see a lot of unneeded analysis of Survivor edits, to be honest, where it's like, okay, why are we even doing this? But I really feel like The Amazing Race also deserves some love, especially in terms of the fact that there is an edit. I am trying to look at the winners edit more. I don't think there's that much of a winners edit. I mean, it's pretty clear which teams are more important in The Amazing Race, but I don't think there's a very blatant winner edit. I think this is a very blatant edit, though, that kind of exists every season. Again, it's typically a guy-to-guy team, finishing in 3rd to 6th place, and being a very dominant force up to that point, being really one of the last obstacles for the winner, and being sort of like the fallen angel of The Amazing Race. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.